Well, this is the first time that I've had it in my workshop to have a really good look at it. This is a really exciting part for me. I can't tell you why, it just is. It's great to get a piece in and see how it's been put together, see what I've got to do to make it good again. This piece might need rebuilding. It's typical of furniture of its time that it was actually nailed and glued, which might surprise some people, but as I say, typical of the period. I might need to completely take it apart to do this and make it into like a flat pack piece of furniture. Those of you from the UK would, if I said MFI, you'd know what I mean, but not quite, of course. Or I might be able to do it in situ, joint by joint, so leaving it made up, going through, making good each joint. The benefit of this method is if a piece has actually warped, it remains under tension, and therefore if I take it apart and a bit's warped, trying to get it back into its position exactly can be quite difficult to do. Anyway, don't think I'm going to have much of a problem with this, so we'll just wait and see what comes about. I have the drawers out. Not surprisingly, they've actually worn away over the years. You can see this curve here, and it's happened to both sides of this drawer, but only to the one side of this drawer. That one over there's completely fine. It's all right. I just zoomed in. I'm not very good with this camera. So let's zoom back out again. There we are. So they'll need rebuilding, and along with the worn parts on the drawers, unsurprisingly, the rails are deeply grooved. Look at that. You can see how much this piece has been used, and look at the grooves there. So not a big problem, but I'll get on to that. I've decided it's got to come apart. I'm going to flat pack it. Before I do that though, I'm going to cut the bottom off here, this loosely scrolled timber, and I'll have to shorten the sides. You'll see on the diagram here that there's the thing is, what should I say, the piece is supported on legs. Now, by chance, this is a really good move, because the oak is actually quite badly damaged down the bottom, and although that could be repaired, I wouldn't really be happy with it. So inadvertently, the suspension on legs is solving a problem as well. So I'm going to get on and remove the bottom portion and cut the sides to length. I've also, just a tip here for anybody that's taking furniture apart, I've pinned some plywood under each of the joints that I'm going to remake. They act as guides and will greatly help in making sure that each piece fits together exactly as it was before. I'll be gluing and doweling it, so removing the nails altogether. This is what I refer to as flat pack. It is no more in any shape that is recognised as furniture. Good job that did take it apart, really, because actually it hasn't even been glued. It's just nailed together, as you can see here. The only problem is, now that I've taken it apart, I haven't got any instructions to put it back together, which is a bit of a problem. So Simon and Alison, would you mind having it back like this? Would Would that be okay? Although I don't mean this to be a detailed step-by-step documentation of the process, I just thought I'd show you the change in the cabinet doors. So on the left we have the old one with the very thick, wide rail, bottom rail, which I believe put the door completely out of balance. So I've removed that that rail, cut it down and rejointed it so that the top and bottom rail and the two stiles are all of equal width. And just while I'm on, that's the side of the drawer, so all the drawers have been taken to bits. And to get rid of that curve, so this is actually the bottom of the drawer, it's upside down, and I've reshoed it so that they'll all be nice and square and straight and will fit nicely. Well, here we have each component rough sanded to 180 grit. You could say this is true flat pack now, because all but the doors are in pieces. As you saw the doors earlier on, and I managed to keep them intact, other than taking them apart to redo the bottom rail. There's quite a few marks and deep marks on the top of the unit, and I had to do quite a lot of sanding on there. There's the top now. I'm not too sure if that's going to be a bit thin now. What do you think? I jest, of course. No, that's the top. A few holes filled on there, or I should actually say, well, so they're filled with dowel of matching oak, or hopefully matching oak, but it's just, as I say, rough sand at the moment. So I'm going to start putting it back together now, which should be good fun. I had every intention of showing you these in the last shot I did, but you may remember I said this piece was completely nailed together, and that's all the nails that came out. Quite a few, isn't there? Now I've just started to make the legs for this piece. I'm using reclaimed Remu from old-fashioned beds that used a mesh as the base that was held under tension between Remu crossbars, and these are part of that frame. Those of you of a certain age will probably be quite familiar with them, those of you that live in New Zealand. I've just cut one of them out, so there it is in its basic form. Let's see how it goes from here. So here we have the rough cut of the legs from the 4 bed rails. Now I had to do a second cut of them. So there's the first bit I cut off them after cutting them to length. Unfortunately, there wasn't enough in each rail to get 2 legs out of them, so we're left with those offcuts. But when I'd done the first cut on them, I held them up against the piece, and I didn't like the proportions of them. It's often the case, the drawings all well and good, but you need to actually cut the material to rough shape to see if it actually fits the furniture. So I cut another strip off each leg. which although obviously took a lot more time, they're a lot better proportioned now, and also it let me cut off a few marks and deformities, if you like, for want of a better word, that were actually on the legs. So altogether they're going to look much better. The cabinet is now back together. The legs have been fitted to test them, just to check they work. They will come back off to have the apertures created, and also the top will come back off. I just wanted to check that everything fitted nicely. I've also added a strengthening bar at the back here, along with the new drawer slider. If you remember from the previous videos, that was deeply scored, so needed a new one of those. So starting to see some shape. There'll be a lot of oak doweling to do to fill the screw holes, which will just finish it off inside. Whoops. Next job is to take those legs off and start forming the apertures. You're looking at the unit upside down at the moment. I just thought I'd show you what I've done to the underneath. Now the bottom panel, you can't see my finger, i.e. this, was severely warped. It was cupped. So from one side to the other, it sort of got into a U shape, or a very shallow U shape. So I've put these struts along here to flatten it out. And while I was at it, furniture sometimes sags in the middle here when it's got a few years on it, you know, with the weight inside. So I put this cross member along here to hopefully mitigate that. So it should be pretty solid. Just in case you're wondering whether or not this strengthening can be seen when it's the right way up, hopefully it can't. I have had a look already and it's fine, but I will be painting it all matte black, so it will blend in to its background anyway. The bottom is now finished in its matte black, so that there's no reflections under the furniture, just in case at some angles you might see the strengthening timber. As I say, I have checked it, but better be safe than sorry. These caps here are just to keep it off the ground while I work on it before the legs go on. And while I'm at it, just a tip for people that might be looking to do furniture up. This bit here is actually this side is the up side. If you remember, I showed you that there was grooves. This is a good example here, from where the drawers had been over the years, wearing it down. Now, it was either a question of replacing this bit of oak or filling that area, because if it wasn't filled, the drawers would always run in it and then wouldn't sit squarely in the aperture nicely, or even potentially not run very nicely. So I've just flipped that over so it's nice and clean on the other side. It's not a big problem visually. Well, it's not a problem at all visually because you won't see it. But it's just a good tip if you are faced with that problem. I've created the plywood end grain panels for the doors, and I've inserted the cut panels, the centre panels. I've cut them to size. I was debating whether or not to stick the panels all together and just make it one big whole panel, and then just stick strips on the front here for the demarcation between the ply panels that are going this way, going from right to left, and the ones each side which are going from top to bottom. But I thought that would be a bit of a cheat and wouldn't look so nice on the back side of the doors. So I decided to actually make rebaited strips to go in. So that's a T shape, that strip. Took a lot longer, as you could probably imagine, but I don't know. It's just more authentic, and well, more pleasing to do actually. But, so yeah, I'm very pleased with it actually. The way it's going. The panels in here, my idea is that as long as I can cut them absolutely precisely to fitting the apertures, which the two centre ones have gone in beautifully, but there'll be no beading. Normally you'd have a beading along here to hide where, you know, they don't. Sometimes if you cut something, they won't fit perfectly. But I'm hoping that they'll just sit in there, and they'll be glued in on the rebate flange here. So when you open the door, you will see virtually what you see from the front as well. So that's where we're up to.